Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to another episode of the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. We are back for another episode of our Falcons roster preview series. I'm Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin, joined by a very special guest, my former co-host for Trench Talk last season. He is Jordan Watkins at Big 75. Fella, Jordan, welcome back to the program. How are you doing?
Man, it's so good to be back. I am so happy. Everything's good over here. Got a little break from work. So when you told me you wanted me back on, it was a no-brainer.
Yeah, well, I'm glad we could make the timing work. And you do have a good excuse for why, you've left the Dirty Birds and Brews behind. So tell the people what you're doing now. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, no, it's great. I'm back in my alma mater, the program that I was in. So I took a job about 2.5 months now, which is crazy. As a assistant director of recruiting operations with Stanford football. Been pretty busy. We just had official visits, all that going on. We had some camps that were going on. So yeah, now like I said, we're on a little bit of a break, but couldn't be happier to be back a part of the program, be back on the farm. It's everything's just been awesome. It's really great.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a perfect opportunity. I'm super excited for you. And just
Thank
really
you.
had a lot of fun. I'm glad I got you for the season that we had. I thought it was not the best season of Falcons football, but I think we had a good time with it, and we had some great episodes. So really appreciated getting to work with you then, and definitely excited to see where it continues to go for you, and happy, of course, to get you back on here occasionally
Thank you.
as well.
Absolutely.
But well, guys, we're going to dive into the defensive line, of course, Jordan's specialty. It's going to be like a little throwback to our Trench Talk episodes. We're going to get into this Falcons defensive line, which has had a lot of moving pieces, a lot of new additions. So plenty to talk about today. Before we dive in depth, want to bring you a real quick word from our sponsor. Once again, guys, it's BetOnline, and BetOnline is your number one source for all your sports betting needs this season. Obviously, the NHL Stanley Cup, very dramatic finish there, but the NHL has ended, so now we're on to baseball, we're on to golf, soccer. Maybe we'll get this presidential golf match at some point,
Oh, good God.
I guarantee there'll be bets on that. If it happens, BetOnline
Yeah, there would
has your back.
absolutely be bets on that. You're 100% right.
BetOnline will have your back if that ever happens. But we got the Copa America and soccer going on, as well as the top fights in the UFC, MMA, and boxing. But no matter what you got, guys, BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game's over, you can head over to BetOnline's new online casino and get in on that online game of blackjack or poker, whatever strikes your fancy. They've also got over 150 online slots games available to play. So what are you waiting for, folks? Head on over to that website, BetOnline, to get in on the action. We do have a new promo running. It is still code BELIEVE, BLEAV. And you now get a 50% free bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. So slightly different promo there. But yeah, no matter what, guys, BetOnline, the game starts here. All right. Well, Jordan, I don't know if you want to, there's actually like more ways we could break this up, because last year I think they kind of simplified it where it was like it's edge guys and it's interior guys. Now we're going back kind of more to the Dean Peasy, 3-4 hybrid, where we're gonna get some more outside linebacker types. We're gonna get some more like 3-4 DN types and the like pure interior guys. So we can break it up however you want. I know the topic du jour for most is edge rushers, but I know you like the interior guys. So as do I. I'm also an interior connoisseur. So where would you like to start this thing off?
No, I mean, let's start there, because I think honestly, to an extent, it varies a little bit, but the conversation, I think, of both interior and edge is kind of similar, of like the amount of unknown that is there. Now, of course, like I think for a lot of people, you would look at it and say, what do you mean the unknown? Like Grady Jarrett's been here forever. We know what he is. David Onyemata has been a player for a long time. We know what he is, and of course we bring back Mikael London, saw what he did last year. List goes on and on. But of course, at the same time, so I think on the edge, you have the unknown because of youth and inexperience. Interior, you have somewhat of an unknown because of injury, right? Obviously, Grady Jarrett coming back, and I think he's still going to be a hell of a player from his ACL tear last year. But now the question is, how long is that going to take, right? We've seen, over the course of football, especially the last few years, sometimes ACLs, they could take, maybe you're a freak like Adrian Peterson, Or, to compare it to another sport, Ronald Acuna Jr., when he tore his, it took him a whole season to get
Yeah.
back to feeling, like himself, right? So you just don't know. And but in terms of depth overall, obviously, like, you bring in Ruka Roro from Clemson as well, high energy guy, and honestly, I love having a high energy guy in the interior. That like
Mhm.
that fires me up. So I think that's going to be great. Again, like you said, Lakeil London's going to be back, and I think that with what he showed last year, I think that again, you can never have enough depth
Yeah.
on the line of scrimmage, offense or defense. You can never
Yeah.
have enough depth. So, I think about some of the guys that we brought in, whether it's Lakeil, obviously Contavious Street's going to be in that mix too. If things go the way I want them to go, and I think all Falcons fans want them to go, and people can be healthy and ready to go, this is a pretty solid, deep interior on the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's kind of crazy, like going through this list. Like the guys you mentioned were both big time contributors last year.
Yeah.
It was fun. I mean, it wasn't funny. It was actually sad, but it was like after we lost Grady Jarrett, obviously that was a big blow, but it was still okay with Onyemata and Lakeil London and then like Contavious Street. And then we go on to lose Onyemata for some time. We lose Lakeil London for a big stretch. And then we lose Contavious Street too. And it's like, you just can't, there's no way to
Uh-huh.
keep, like, it's like, wow, how can you overcome that? And how you do that is you draft like 3 more interior guys this year in addition to all those guys. And we haven't even mentioned Taquan Graham's name yet. So it's like,
Yep.
this is, and Eddie Goldman is practicing. Eddie Goldman is practicing, Jordan. He's
He's
there.
actually practicing. I know, I
So-
know. That's so like I actually intentionally didn't say his name just because like I don't know if he's gonna be there or
yeah.
not. And that's not, and I'm not trying to like take a shot at him. Like, look,
No,
if you
no.
got something going on while you retire, come back. Like obviously it's happened multiple times now. Understood, right?
Hmm.
But
Yep.
it's just because again, like I said, this is now what, the third time?
This is the third time. Yes.
Yeah, third time
So,
going on with Eddie Goldman. So, but no, like honestly, if he's there, like to your point,
yeah.
that is a really good depth that you have on that interior.
Yeah. So it's just, it's an absolutely stacked group from a depth perspective. I think if Grady Jarrett is healthy, I know we saw David Onyemata come back and play well towards the end of the season after his injury, but if
Mhm.
Grady Jarrett's back healthy, when Onyemata and Jarrett were playing together, this was one of the NFL's best interiors. Like it
Yeah,
was
of
kind of the linchpin of the whole defense. Obviously, Calais Campbell was a big part of that too. He was
course.
earlier in the season, he was playing more outside, but I mean, point remains, it's a really tough group up front. But we don't know Grady Jarrett's timeline. It seems like he was probably ready to practice for the end of mandatory minicamp. I don't think that he did, but he's expecting to start training camp practicing, which is a great sign, obviously. And that's the thing, when you have the earlier injuries, you obviously lose
Mhm,
most of the season, which sucks, but you
mhm.
do have more time to rehab before you have to come
Right.
back. So hopefully that'll be working out well for him and we can sort of rely on that duo. But I think the emphasis, like you said, with getting guys in here like Ruka Rororo and Brandon Dorless, Zion Logue is probably going to be in the mix for nose tackle, especially if, Eddie
Mhm.
Goldman does ride off into the sunset again. And they just got this group of guys that I think the idea, particularly with adding like a Ruka Rororo, who very sound against the run right now, very raw as a pass rusher, like just kind of, I mean, he's all energy right now, and that can still work, like especially if you have talent around you, you just kind of
Sure.
go and create havoc. But he's going to need a little bit more time to sort of refine that, and that's fine. But if he can play the run early, that can mean that maybe Grady Jarrett or David Onyemata don't have to play those run snaps. Like if he's a plus run defender, you get some guys up there on early downs to take snaps off the plate of David Onyemata and Grady Jarrett, who are both aging, early 30s defensive linemen. Again, we've seen guys at that age still continue to play well. It's just should they be playing 70% of the snaps like Grady has many years? That's
Right.
just too many
Right.
snaps for almost any interior lineman. It's just not, that's not a recipe for premium play, like especially when you get towards those 70% numbers. So I think they've done a great job of adding a ton of talent to hopefully take some snaps in a good way off of the plate of Jarrett and Onyemata and hopefully improve the unit as a whole.
Well, and I think what's fun about it too is like there's one guy in all of this as well. We can talk about as an inside guy or outside guy because of the weight gain that he's put on this offseason. Zach Harrison now goes
Yeah.
into that mix as an interior guy too, right? And again, I like with what I saw from him down the stretch of the season, I'm all in on the Zach Harrison stock. I'm all in. And so now because he's about, I think 290 is what they said, right around
Yeah.
there. So that's another guy now you can put inside as well in certain situations, and again, remember, this is a defense and a coaching staff on defense. Think about the D lineman who they just had in LA. Right now, I'm not trying to sit here and say Zach Harrison's going to be Aaron Donald. Don't take this as that's me saying that, because I'm not.
Headline. I'm
I'm
gonna
not.
clip that off. Yeah, I'm gonna edit out the part
I
where you
know.
say not and just say Aaron Donald.
I can't wait for the YouTube comments. Like, did
Yeah,
this
yeah.
dude just compare Zach Harrison to Aaron Donald? My point being is, like, they understand how to like use versatile D linemen and put them in certain different situations, right, for success. So the fact that you have somebody like Zach Harrison, who now, as big as he is, can line up in different positions, they already have experience in dealing with that and know how to use it. So that's going to be something that's really interesting to watch, and just how they're going to put him, whether it's the base, and now they're going to be 3-4. You go to your sub or your nickel packages, right? Like you have some positional versatility with someone like Zach Harrison. So it's going to be fun to see how they use him this year.
Yeah, and I think Zach Harrison's one of the biggest wild card guys because again, it's like, where is he going to play? He has been bulking up. He was someone that was drafted to fit the Ryan Nielsen defense, to play outside,
Yeah.
like to play edge. To hand in the dirt 4-3 end, and that's kind of his archetype. But with his wingspan, which is 98th percentile, like 36 over 36-inch arms. I know I did the linebacker group with Trayshawn Diaz, and he was talking about, Tyree Wilson and the comps there. And it's like, actually, Zach Harrison has longer arms than Tyree Wilson, who went in the top 10 because of his length, which is, in hindsight, maybe the Falcons got the better end of that deal after all, considering Harrison's strong finish to his season. But, I'm really interested to see, like, does he play more like 5-tech stuff? Like, does he play more sort of 4-eye? Because we know if they're going after the Rams defense, they're going to play a lot of sets where they have 2 4-eye sort of aligned guys, and he could do that potentially at 290. So it's really interesting. I'm just gonna wait to see kind of how they deploy him, but I think he's a key part of their plans.
100%.
Whether that's playing more big end stuff where he's gonna just take a ton of snaps against the run, or if he's gonna be doing more penetration style stuff, or just if they kind of move him around like a chess piece given his athletic talent and size. But he's definitely, I'm glad you brought him up, because it's like, I don't know where to slot him. Like, I don't know if I should slot him in with the edge rushers or with the interior guys. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe we should just lump them all into just defensive line in general. But this group is just, it's so hard, because like I did an early like 53-man projection, last month. I'm going to do another one before camp. And it's like, I just feel terrible. It's like, who am I leaving out of, like, because I have 6 interior guys making it, which is more than a lot of teams carry. I think for this team they're going to carry a lot of defensive linemen. It's kind of always been Raheem Morris's MO. But it's like, who do you keep and who do you leave off? Like, it's like you have to think they're going to keep the rookies, the Rukaroro and Brandon Dorless at least, but they also added Zion Logue late. Obviously Jarrett and Onyemata are making it if they're healthy. Do they want a specific nose tackle, which would probably be like an Eddie Goldman or a, Zion Logue in that spot? Tommy Togiai, I think, is in that sort of mix as well. And then it's like Kentavious Street and LaCale London were both guys that clearly deserved to be on this roster last year and played
100%.
great rotational snaps for us. So it's like, who do you leave off? Because right now it's like, you're picking between, and I didn't even say Taquan Graham's name. And it's like, is Taquan Graham going to make the roster? Like, they have invested so much in the interior. It's a good problem to have, but it's just like, wow, there's going to be some absolutely brutal cuts in this. Like, I think the Falcons could see multiple guys claimed from their cuts in terms of this interior group.
Well, I think that is a sign of a program and a franchise that is turning the corner, right? Like, you look at it you look at it across the country and across the league. Obviously, for me, as we all know, I'm in the Bay Area, so a lot of times out here, the conversation is, hey, if this person gets cut or gets released, in training camp, somebody's going to pick them just because they're like a really talented player on the 49ers. Right. And so that's what I'm saying. Like, with this group, you're like, this is where you're seeing, I think, overall for the Falcons, of like, you're right there. Again, yes, someone probably from that group is not going to, maybe not even just someone, I'd say like 2 or 3 guys from that group will not make the team. And that doesn't mean that they're a bad player. It's just like that's how the numbers look and how it shapes out. And you'll see someone pick them up pretty quickly. I think that just goes to show you, though, of like where the Falcons are and what their potential also could be. I mean, obviously, we were saying the same thing last year, right? But I think one of the biggest things, maybe two biggest things that we had, roster wise, coaching wise, we've addressed. So it'll look a little different. But I think to your point, though, just that whole idea of some tough cuts, like you want, if you're a fan of a team, or if you're at Flowery Branch, wherever the case may be, you want tough cuts.
Yeah.
Right? Like you don't want easy. Oh yeah, no, that's yeah, he's gone. All right, boom, he's gone. Send the Turk to his dorm room because he's gone. Right. Like you don't want that. Like you want it to be tough because that means that you had competition there, and it's a hard decision because they're all good players.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Like you don't want it to be easy. Obviously, you never want to cut anybody, but you're
No.
doing your team and the players a disservice if you don't bring in as much competition as you can, because tough camps breed tough players and better teams, and like it helps the players too. Like they get to go up against this, especially the fringe guys, because they get to show their stuff in a competitive NFL training camp. That can lead to opportunities down the road. You never know what assistant coaches are gonna end up elsewhere eventually. You never know. You could get a call back mid-season. I mean, stuff happens, and there's a lot of paths to making an NFL roster. Obviously, the easy one is to just make it outright, but that's not the path for most NFL players. You got to fight for it for many years. So it's a tough process, but I'm excited to see who emerges, because especially from that interior group, it's going to be a battle royale for sure. And I'm excited to see, who does emerge, because I think the six or so that we keep on that interior are going to be a quite good group. I think at the end of the day, it's going to be deep. We're going to have guys inactive that like could probably be playing for other NFL teams, and that's not something I think we could say until maybe last year was the first time where the Falcons actually had the interior that other teams might want.
Right.
I think this year for sure. And it all starts up top, and we'll have to see how the rookies, how quickly they acclimate. Rook, again, very sound against the run. That's typically how you get on the field early. Brandon Dorlus, a little bit more of a polished pass rusher, so maybe they'll try to work him in, when Jarrett or Onyemata need a breather on third downs. But they're building something in this group, and it seems pretty clear, like Rook and Brandon Dorlus are those kind of prototypical 3-4 end type guys. They've got that size, but also the athleticism to kind of do a little bit of everything there. I'm really excited to see how it shakes out, because our closest frame of reference is the Rams, but like there's no, like, Raheem Morris is kind of like a chameleon. Like he will just like there was a great Raheem went on the Athletic Football Show with Robert Mays a couple weeks ago, and basically he was like, so what happened when you got to the Rams, like after leaving the Falcons? Like you became their defensive coordinator. And he was like, oh yeah. I was like, yeah, just teach me the defense. I'm not going to teach the team a new defense. Like teach me the defense, and we're going to run whatever you guys have been running. And it's like, wow, like why don't more coaches do that? Like it's like, Raheem's like, instead of making everybody else learn something else, like why don't we just do what you guys know how to do already?
Right.
And it worked great. And it's like, I think Raheem is kind of a scheme agnostic guy. He's just going to be like, well, what do we have? What works best? What are they comfortable with? Let's do that. And so will it be exactly like the Rams? Probably not. Will it be similar? Probably. But, Jimmy Lake, we haven't seen him call a defense in the NFL either. So.
And that's the thing. Like I've gone against some teams that were coached by Jimmy Lake, right? Now to be fair, those teams did have Vita Vea, so that changes things up. But I the way I understand it and I see it is, for example, you're not gonna, if you don't have like a big three, let's say just 325, 330 nose tackle, you're not gonna go straight 3-4 base. Right, in terms of nose, 4-eye, right? Like you don't do that, and I'm saying that in terms of, like, with Jimmy Lake and the whole staff, since we won't have that guy at least ready to go right away. They're not going to do that just all the time, even though it says 3-4, because I think a lot of times people see 3-4 and you automatically think, oh, everyone's going to two gap and we have, like all these, like they're expecting all these big guys to, two gap, read, react, things like that. Like, no, it doesn't mean that. It just means like that's your personnel,
Yeah.
right? Because you can still line up in some even fronts in a 3-4 look. So like I said, it's just all interesting to see how it's going to play out. I still think we're going to be a lot of situations where we have a 3 tech and a 1 tech on the backside of the strength. And yeah, like especially like I'm sure Jimmy Lake's looking at, okay, Grady Jarrett, he's really good at penetrating. Let's let him penetrate. Well, you don't penetrate from playing head up nose, right? And so like that's what I'm saying. It's gonna the personnel grouping might be that for base, but I'm still interested to see how like, it's actually going to play out and work out. But that's also why it's so great that you have someone like Zach Harrison, because he can play the 3 if you need him to. He can be the 4-eye if you need him to. Probably still can be the 5. Like I haven't seen him actually, work out and be in pads and whatnot. Of course, we'll get into that once it's time for training camp. But so like having versatility like that and this type of defense is huge.
Yeah.
Huge. So
Yeah. It's going to be exciting. I'm excited to see how it shakes out. If they want to run that base stuff, you have to think they're crossing their fingers that the Eddie Goldman is what he used to be, because that's kind of the nose tackle they have. I think they're probably going to be bulking up Zion Logue and trying to get him ready to do that role too. But that's more of a transition for him.
Right.
Whereas Goldman, it's like if he can do it, and he's back, like he was great at it. So we'll see, if he can handle that or not. But I think they're kind of set up to go whichever way they want, whether they want to go for more penetration style or whatnot. But the Rams, they were really good at using sim pressures and doing things kind of creatively to get one-on-ones for their chosen guy, which was, of course, Aaron Donald. But, for the Falcons, maybe they do that for Grady. Maybe they do that for Onyemata. You sort of drop guys and you send linebackers or whoever to try to get your guys one-on-ones. And, it would be nice to see Jarrett and Onyemata get some one-on-one opportunities. I think that'll help their efficiency numbers go up. And we also have a great blitzing linebacker in Caden Ellis. I'm just saying.
Well, that's what's so fun. I know we're not on that topic yet in terms of the outside guys, the edge guys, but that's what's so fun. I talked about positional versatility with guys like Zach Harrison. I almost said James Harrison.
That'd be nice if we had him. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, a few years younger, but that
maybe
would
a
be
few.
nice.
Yeah. I'll take him. I'll take him right now.
Right. But like the guys like Zach Harrison, you have that all over your linebacking room. Right. And like I said, we'll get into it. Obviously, we know where Arnold Ebiketie is going to line up. Caden Ellis can line up anywhere. Troy Anderson can line up anywhere. And then, of course, it's fun. We'll see how he looks. But the rookie bring in JD Bertrand, like obviously, like he was a very talented pass rusher in Notre Dame. So there's a lot of things you can move around with in this defense. And yeah, like it's only going to benefit the Falcons, right? When it comes down to it, where hey, the offense is coming up to the line. Obviously, center points out the mic. They point protection here or there based off of course, who you think is rushing and all that. The Falcons have a chance, right, to be out there, and you really don't know who could be rushing at any given time.
Yeah,
you don't know, and like I said, it's fun, and I don't want to get too much into it yet because I know we still got to get to the edge guys, and I'll get more into it there. But just like I said, that's that little sneak preview of what really could happen with this front 7 group.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great segue into talking more about the edge rusher group. And right now the Falcons have a lot of guys there. I think this is the group that most people are the most concerned about on the defensive side of the ball. There's just not a lot, like losing like Calais Campbell. Calais Campbell was kind of the established guy there, and like he wasn't the best like 4-3 edge last year. He was still quite good, like, and especially when they started playing him on the interior, which I think that's just a better fit for his skill set, like at this stage of his career. But like, he was established. He knew exactly what to do, and he made plays when the Falcons needed him to. So, like, losing that is still big. I understand him probably wanting to continue to play edge. That's kind of why he came to the Falcons last year, is they were going to let him play edge, and I assume that the Dolphins are going to do the same thing there, so don't begrudge him that at all. But the Falcons, we're really looking for a lot from a couple of players, and Arnold Ebiketie is the main one, obviously, to start on that. going back to the more 3-4 sort of looks, he's probably going to get more opportunities to stand up, which I think is just better for him, just period. And he's going to get more opportunities to rush from like a 7 and 9 look.
Yep.
I don't know how much wide 9 they're going to do in this scheme, but at least 7. Like, I think that's just a better fit for him in general,
Sure. Yeah.
than having him, right outside the tackle. That's a tough assignment for him, but he's a good pass rusher. He's going back to a scheme that he ran in college, very familiar with. He did do some coverage dropping at Penn State. It was something that was in his repertoire. So if we know the Rams like to do that a lot, that could be an option. But I mean, for Arnold Ebiketie, like, I feel like he's kind of the linchpin. Like, they need him to be the alpha pass rusher in this edge group, and he hasn't done it yet. He did have a very good sack rate last year. He played like 30% of the snaps. He was not at all a featured player for this defense. That's obviously going to probably double at minimum this year. But I mean, what do you think about Ebiketie? Do you have faith in him kind of taking on that alpha role this year?
I do. I mean, just because I've seen, individual reps here and there, it's like, you got it in you. It'd be one of those things of, oh man, if I'm watching the tape, I wish he was more flexible, right? Like, work on your hip mobility and things like that. But no, he's got it there. And so now it's just taking that next step in terms of production. But again, this is why I think what's so awesome for the Falcons is that ascension of Nate Landman last year. Because now, again, obviously in the 3-4, you have basically 2 middle linebackers, right? Okay, so pick who you want there. Caden Ellis could be there if he wants to, or you can put Caden Ellis outside. He's a rusher. Because you can do that because now, boom, Nate steps in there. Or do you put Troy Anderson? And I honestly do think when I heard that we were going to more of a 3-4, that was one of my first thoughts, is like, I might see Troy Anderson more at the line of scrimmage this year with his athleticism. And of course he did some of that. He lined up everywhere in college.
Yeah.
But
both sides of the ball.
Yeah, exactly. Both sides of the ball. He was everywhere. So I really thought, I was like, yeah, I might see Troy more at the line of scrimmage this year. Because then, of course, at the same time, if you want to move those guys out, you want to bring in JD Bertrand somewhere and let him be a rushing linebacker on like a third and pass obvious situation. You can do that too, like depending on how he looks at camp. So that's why, like, it's just, again, it's fun. I know I'm talking about some of the interior linebackers, but they're not just interior linebackers. They can also be edge guys too. There are a lot of options, for the Falcons this year. And I know we talked about that on the inside. It's the same on the outside, where that's why I wanted to bring up, hey, if you're a center going to the line, who are you going to point to? Because you might see a 44 out there, or you might see, late Nate Landman or Kate. Like, you might see those guys out there, but that doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to be the ones rushing. They could break the huddle, and all of a sudden, boom, they're at the line, they're on the edge, or one's dropping, one's blitzing. Like, we have that versatility, but it all plays back into what's going to be on the front.
Yeah, no,
because they all had the opportunity to line up there.
They do, and like, I think that's an interesting way to look at it, considering those guys kind of part of the overall edge rotation. Because I think other than Landman, who I think is probably more that prototypical inside linebacker, I think all the other guys you mentioned, like, they have shown that they can play outside some. And like with Caden Ellis, he was an edge rusher like all through college. So that he has learned to play off ball, and part of his value is that he can play any position basically, like in terms of outside linebacker, inside linebacker, edge rusher if needed. So with Caden Ellis, he can be your chess piece, and Troy Anderson's kind of like that too. I wonder if they'll be tempted to keep Troy back more because he's kind of the coverage guy, right? Like, he is the one that theoretically has the coverage upside that can run with tight ends, run with running backs, and probably be faster than almost every tight end, other than Kyle Pitts, which I think he was actually faster than Kyle Pitts technically by like a 0.02 on the 40. Close. But we'll call it a draw. But they have so many options, and it's like they could come out in 3 linebacker sets, to where teams are like, oh, they're playing 3 linebackers. That's weird. But Caden Ellis just walks up to the line of scrimmage, and it's like, oh, this is basically a 3-4 look now. Because I think there's a scenario where like 3 of your top 11 defensive players are, Caden Ellis, Nate Landman, Troy Anderson. And it's like, well, so few teams play 3 linebackers these days in the NFL. You just don't see it. But like, Troy Anderson, if he can start playing up to what we were hoping to see with his athleticism, I mean, he has better athleticism than most safeties. Like, I mean, it's
Yeah.
kind of nuts to look at. So, like, he could be more of a coverage player. He could play on the edge. I mean, I think he was like a perfect 10 at safety, a perfect 10 at edge, a perfect 10 at, like, quarterback, like all these things in terms of RAS score and all this. So he's got the ability to do it.
Hmm.
I don't know like how much he'll be ready for. I know he's probably been getting a ton of like mental reps throughout his recovery, and by all accounts, he's full go at this stage, in terms of his recovery from injury. But it's a fascinating group there. And then it's like, how do they mix in these other guys? Because everyone, I think, looks at this strictly like sort of edge group. You see Arnold Ebiketie, you're like, okay, he's the guy we're sort of depending on. We draft Bralen Trice, one of the most productive college pass
And that,
rushers. Yeah.
yeah, I
So
was just gonna say real quick, like not to cut you off. I
no, no,
apologize
no.
for that. I've told people I think Bralen Trice is the most important player in this draft class. Now, in terms of the immediate future, right? Like, of
Yeah.
course, like whatever happens with Kirk Cousins and then Michael Penix down the road, once he gets the quarterbacks, okay, you lose the argument. But for the immediate future, like this year, and we're saying health is what it is. I think Bralen Trice is the most important player in this draft class. And I'm saying that because, like you talked about his productivity, the dude gets after it, right? In terms of pass rush and getting after quarterback. So if he can be a guy early on for this team, that opens up a whole different can of worms that is really just going to be awesome. And I mean, obviously, I'm out here on the West Coast. I watch Bralen Trice a lot. That dude's a player. Like when I saw we drafted him, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm in. I'm sold. Let's go. It was one of those moments. So yeah, like I said, just wanted to say that real quick.
No, I think Trice is a great next person to talk about because it's kind of open ended who will be the other like edge rusher most of the time. I think Lorenzo
Mhm.
Carter's probably in the mix. We know his athleticism is also outstanding. He's got some flexibility to drop into coverage and things like that. Uh, so he could be in the mix there too. James Smith Williams they signed this offseason coming
Mhm.
over. He's apparently been playing more like big end type stuff for them. So he
Yep.
might be more of a hand in the dirt guy. And then we still have guys like D'Angelo Malone who didn't get to play defense last year, but was like a core special teamer. They just signed Bradley and who I liked coming out of the draft. Haven't seen much of since then. But I think Trice is a good one to focus on because he could be a starter. Like he could walk
Yeah.
into like if he beats out Lorenzo Carter, he could walk into a very immediate role on this team. And yeah, like what are some things that I mean, it seems like you think he can be an instant impact guy potentially. What are some things about Trice that you think could translate to the NFL?
Yeah, I think well, first off, and I know people will look at what his 40 time was. I like for the most part for guys on the line, I don't care about 40 times. Like I care about that 10-yard split and the explosive testing.
Yeah.
So there's that. But also I think for him, which again, like I know we were talking about Troy Anderson. Well, Troy was very explosive too. Like it wasn't just he ran fast,
Yeah.
right?
He did
Um,
everything fast. He did
yeah, he,
everything
he did
fast.
he did everything pretty dang on good. But with Braylon, I'm always intrigued and impressed with young players that are pass rushers that already have like a repertoire to them.
Mhm.
Because a lot of times when you're a younger player, you're just more athletic than who you're going up against, right? And that's how you get those sacks and get those pressures. But with Braylon, yes, he's athletic, don't get me wrong, but you see the hand action, you see the movement, you see the flip, the mobility in his hips and the fluidity in his hips where he can bend that edge and turn corners. So it's one of those things where I feel like his game and how he's a good pass rusher, it translates. And that's why again I'm looking at him of like that's going to be the most important guy because obviously, yeah, I think to make like Arnold Ebiketie is going to be the biggest question. And I'm saying that even with like what does Grady Jarrett look like coming off an injury? I think Arnold Ebiketie is the biggest question. I think he's gonna be a good answer to that question. But guess what makes his job easier? If you have somebody on that other side that can get after it too. And that's why I'm saying I think Braylon is like the most important player in this draft class. But also, like I said, I think he's good enough to make some things happen. Like if you get, I'll say like what 6-7 sacks out of Bralen Trice this rookie year, we're in a good spot.
Yeah,
We're in a good
absolutely.
spot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that would be tremendous. And like the one thing watching Trice, like he's just absolutely tenacious. Like he just does
Yes.
not. He
Yes.
never stops. Like it's like they have
Ever.
to like drag this guy off the field basically after the whistle blows. And like guys that play with that level of energy, they're just productive players. They will always get things
Yeah.
done. With Trice, it's like not the most bendy, not the most elite in terms of athleticism. I think the length was interesting because one of Fontenot's sort of MOs has been
Yeah.
he drafts guys with just great like plus length. Trice
And
is
he's
like the
not the
first
longest.
one.
Yeah.
Trice is like the first one that hasn't had the length, but I think it's
Yeah.
like you look at
Yeah.
everything else and you're like, I don't care. Like, and when you have the repertoire like he does, it's like it's not as important, especially for young players. Like,
Mhm.
you need the length if you don't have the repertoire. Now it's nice to have the length and the repertoire,
A
but
hundred
if
percent.
if you don't have the length, you have to have the moves, and he definitely has the moves down. So it may not be as much of an impediment. And the other thing with Trice is he's a good run defender, so that typically gives rookies a pathway onto the field early if they can get in
Mhm.
on early downs. So I mean, the spot's wide open. Like we know Lorenzo Carter is like a quality rotational guy. He's not someone that screams like I need to start for your team. So it could. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility that Trice could win the job in camp, but at least over the course of the season, we could see that happen too. Um, but
And
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
like, also, like, what if he has a role that ends up being like later in his career, John Abraham,
yeah,
right? Where it's all right, hey, first, second down, run obvious situations. Hey, just chill by us, get some
mhm,
Gatorade, water, whatever. Third down, boom, you're out there. Like
yeah,
that could be something where if he grows into it and earns it, maybe that's what he does early on,
yeah,
right? So, and I know, like you talked about, like he is a good run defender, but also so is Lorenzo Carter. So,
yeah,
like
yeah,
that could be the best of both worlds. Where, yeah, again, like you said, Lorenzo's not a big ego guy, but again, like that's how you can still. He's happy. He's out there on early downs, and then boom, we bring in the young bull to go out there and make some things shake.
yeah. No, I'm excited to see how they divvy that up, and I think you know Trice is probably the second most interesting, other than Arnold Ebiketie, just how much, is kind of pinned on him. But honestly, if either Trice or Ebiketie turns into the alpha pass rusher, that's fine. It just seems
Hmm.
like the
Hmm.
third year breakout for edge rushers is like a real thing. It's common in the NFL that it's the third year that you see these guys really hit their stride. So hopefully that's the case for Arnold. And we could see Trice have a productive rookie season too. But sort of getting to those veteran guys, like we talked about Carter a bit, but also, James Smith Williams, he might be playing more of that like bigger end role, kind of
Yep.
similar to Zach Harrison. But they've got some in Lorenzo Carter and James Smith Williams, they do have some reliable veterans, like guys that can play a role. But again, people look at those names and they're like, oh well, these aren't like needle mover types. But you need to have these sort of reliable pieces there, and I think
Hundred
Carter and
percent.
James Smith Williams are probably going to make this roster on the back of Smith Williams, very good run defender. Lorenzo Carter, just versatile. But what do you expect from those guys in terms of what they could bring this year?
Well, I think what's so fun about versatility and depth, especially on the defensive line, is obviously you got to remember offensive linemen take every snap, right? If they're healthy, right, no one gets hurt, whatever. And of course, I'm not hoping anyone gets hurt, but they take every snap. So the fact that all of a sudden, you're in the third quarter, maybe early fourth quarter, and you can bring in someone like James Smith Williams, right, like you're talking about, who's good against the run, and it's against like a tired guard, like he's going to look pretty doggone good,
Yeah,
right? And again, like obviously, like I said, I'm out here in the Bay, so I've watched the 49ers do this for years, where their second string guys and their third string guys get paid after being out here. Well, why is that? Well, of course, first off, D-line coach out here is probably the best in the league. Like we all know that.
yeah,
But at the same time, it's yeah, you get to go after some tired prey, after Nick Bosa and Eric Armstead. I know he's gone now, but I'm saying like in the past few years, like all those kind of guys go after them. Now here you are like taking some reps, and yeah, you look great. That's how they get paid. And so that's what, again, I'm hoping that, I'm hoping for that second year leap for Zach Harrison. Um, and then of course, David Onyemata and Grady Jarrett, they're healthy, ready to go. Yeah, once you bring in some guys like that, like those certain snaps, right, when they have to play, they can look like studs and get paid. Like I want everybody to get paid, right? That that
yeah,
that's just
yeah.
how I am. I want everyone to get paid. So yeah, like I think that's what they can bring is, hey, when your name is called in terms of, whether it's 10 snaps, 12 snaps here or there in a game. But because you're fresh and those O linemen aren't, you're going to look pretty doggone good.
Yeah,
Like,
I
I
agree.
want to go on
Mhm.
Twitter after a game and be like, I want to see some people on Twitter be like, James Smith Williams needs more snaps.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he's so productive. Why is he not playing more? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what I want to see.
Yeah. No, and I think this is something that, like, I think it was needed more, like, under Dan Quinn, especially. Like, they just needed more of these, like, reliable veteran guys, and I think they relied a little bit too much on, like, here's some interesting developmental guys, and we'll hope these guys pan out while we spend, tons of money on Dante Fowler. But, like, it was just like
Mhm.
after Fowler got off the field, it was like, oh, can we really rely on these guys to get it done? And it's like it's kind of the opposite approach now, where there's not this high priced piece out there, but they've kind of built out the rest of the depth chart. And it doesn't grab headlines. It leads to people being like, oh, is this the worst edge room in the NFL? I think at the end of the year, we're not going to be talking about it that way. I think it's probably not going to be a contention for the best, but, because the interior has the potential to be so good, they don't need it to be the best edge rushing group because they've invested so much on the interior. And
Mhm.
against a lot of these quarterbacks too, like, the way to really disrupt them is to get the interior pressure. And, obviously some guys are better at avoiding that than others, but I think that the whole product they put out there in terms of this defensive line could be better than a lot of people expect because of just the totality of it's sort of the sum is greater than its parts or whatever
Then parts,
altogether.
yeah. Well, I think when you look at it and you look at sports in general, the most important thing has always been one of the most important things has always been the depth. Like, you can look at any sport, right? Obviously in the NBA, like Shaq always talks about the others. Of course, now he played with I would say two of the top three best shooting guards ever, right? With Kobe Bryant, Dwayne Wade. But he always talks about the others. It's like Robert Ory was that guy, right? Big shot Bob when it's time to make things happen. Derek Fisher had that big shot against San Antonio with like what 0.4 seconds
Yeah.
left, I think it was. You look at baseball. I was looking at Atlanta, where your superstar got hurt. Ronald Acuna Jr. tore his ACL. Freddie Freeman had a great postseason, right? He was like the big name. Jorge Soler and Eddie Rosario were your NLCS and World Series MVPs, right? Like, you needed them to step up to make things happen. We all thought, I know I did, Adam Duvall hit the clinching game grand slam in Game 5 in Atlanta, right? So it's always going to be, like the other guys. Or, I mean, again, even if you look in Atlanta for football, if you want to go back to the Super Bowl, because I know you talked about Dan Quinn, right? Where,
Mhm.
again, obviously the majority of that defense played 90 snaps in
Yeah.
a game. Like, things are going to go bad when your defense is on the field for that long.
Yeah.
But, who was going to be that MVP? Could have been Matt Ryan, could have been Julio after his crazy catch. But also, there's an argument for, oh my goodness, his name did not just Robert Alford.
Yeah.
Like, that could have been that, or it could have been Grady Jarrett
Yeah,
because he was about to
Grady
set a
with the
record
three
for the most
sacks.
sacks.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it was the other names that you weren't thinking about. But that's
Yeah.
usually what happens when you have like a top tier level team. Is like those guys that, they might not have turned heads when you signed them or when you drafted them, but they're gonna come up big when you need them to.
Yeah. And that's the hope because it's, I know people are pretty scared of this pass rush taking a big step back. And I mean, they managed 40 sacks last year. I think that was like better than we were certainly hoping. I think we were like, if we could get to like 30, that would be a nice step forward from the
Mhm,
18 we had the previous year. But,
mhm.
um, they get to 40. They sort of show that, they last year kind of was the case in point for this, that you can have a pass rush that is multiple guys, like a lot of guys contributing
Yeah.
sacks. Because the Falcons didn't have a double digit sack player, and they still got 40 sacks. So, like, you
Yep.
can do it that way. It's not necessarily sexy to do that, but if it works, it works. Like, I think if the Falcons found a way to cobble together 40 sacks again, no one would be complaining, obviously. And they just need this pass rush to be good enough for for the coverage unit to be able to do their jobs. And I
Exactly.
think that we're putting a lot of faith in this coaching staff, that Jimmy Lake in particular, like, coverage expert, right? A guy that produced multiple first round picks at Washington through his
Mhm,
tenure. Some of the most, famous corners in the league, safeties in the league, Buda Baker, shout out.
mhm.
Like, this is a coaching staff that I think believes in their ability to get the secondary playing at an elite level. So we just need the pass rush to do their part. They don't necessarily need to be the engine. And I know a lot of fans are like, you have to win up front. That's the only way to do it. But in the NFL, like these days, you can do it as a whole team effort. Like you need both to be good,
You
or at
have
least
to.
average. But if you can have one elite and one average, that can still be a top 15 defense. So
Well, I mean, look at the Super Bowl champions from a year ago, right? An absolutely elite secondary. You know, they had two of the best corners. Shout out my guy Justin Reed, right? And as a DB, as a safety. But also when it came down to it, guess who like the big money guy was? It was Chris Jones up front making things happen, right? So again, to your point, it's and like I mean, ask Trent McDuffie or ask whomever in that back end for Kansas City, like, oh yeah, does it help that you have Chris Jones, pass rushing, or even ask Chris Jones, does it help that quarterbacks get to hold on to the ball just like that half a tick more because you have those guys on the back end? Whether like I said, it was McDuffie, L'Jarius Sneed, who I know obviously is now in Tennessee, I think. But they're both going to say yes. Like we used to always say in meeting rooms, rush and coverage have to be married.
Yep.
Right. And I think that with the group that the Falcons have this year, this is like going to be the smoothest marriage I would say that we've seen in a while. And again, don't take that as me saying that all of a sudden it's going to be great. We're going to be at the top of the league in pressures and stuff. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying like it's definitely going to be trending more that way.
Yeah. I think the goal for this defense as a whole is to try to stay where they are, because I think they overperformed last year. Like I think they were way better than anyone expected. Obviously fell off a bit at the end of the year. Injuries just took their toll. And I think the team as a whole just kind of got exhausted with the whole situation. And, it is what it is. But they just need to stay kind of where they were. Like if they could be a top 15 defense with the offense the way it trending the way it is.
Right.
I mean, they're not going to turn the ball over. Like the one guarantee, you could take it to the bank. They're not going to turn the ball over like they did last year.
Great point.
They're not going to do that.
Point.
So like you're probably cutting your offensive turnovers pretty drastically. And the defense was still good even with all those turnovers. That's the thing. So it's like, are they going to be as good as last year? Probably not, but they could still be statistically similar because they're cutting out all the extra possessions, and that's all they really need to do. Like if they could just stay average, this team is winning double-digit games if it's an average defense.
And the other part to that too is how many times did we see the defense be on the field for the majority of the second half last season, whether it's because of 3 and outs or turnovers. So now all of a sudden you have a more fresh defense because you're not having as many turnovers. They might look better at the end of game situations. You still have to get your job done. If you're on the defense, like you don't let Josh Dobbs break contain, don't let Kyler Murray break contain on like what was it, a 3rd and 18 or whatever it was. Like you still got to do that. I mean, like but like you still got to do that. But of course, it makes it easier for you to do that if you're not on the field as much as you were a season ago. So that does help the turnover part.
I think Troy Anderson being out there for those plays would have made the difference. Just
that would have helped.
Have him be the spy. Like you just chase him down, Troy. You just chase him down wherever he goes. That's all we needed to do. And we didn't have Troy Anderson, so the best laid plans, and so on. But I mean, I think that's a pretty in-depth discussion of all these guys. Anybody else that we didn't specifically touch on that you wanted to get to?
I think overall, like I think we touched on a lot. Again, I'm so intrigued to see how Grady looks when he comes back. Again, just ACLs, knees in general, they're tricky. So that's one of those things where again, I would be shocked and like pleasantly surprised, I guess is the better way to put it. I'd be pleasantly surprised if we see traditional Grady Jarrett off rip, right?
Yeah.
Because again, in my mind, I'm not expecting it. I hope Falcons fans don't think that if he doesn't look the way he used to, he's taking a step back. Like, no, he's coming back from a serious injury. It takes time. Again, like I said, Ronald Acuna took him over a year to feel like himself. And of course, what did he do that next year? 40 home runs, 70 stolen bases. So I'm just really intrigued to see how he looks coming back. Obviously, I don't have to doubt the work he's putting in to get there, right? Like that's never a question in my mind. I I did high school camps with Grady Jarrett, right? Like because
Yeah.
we're right around the same age. So I've seen how he works. I know how he works. Um, but yeah, again, like I said, at the end of the day, two most important people I feel like in this whole conversation of how this group is going to look, Arnold Ebiketie, right? You take that next leap. And then of course on the other side is Bralen Trice. Like what can you bring and how much can you bring early on?
Yeah, I think those are two critical guys for sure. And yeah, I hope Grady's back healthy. We all do. He's one of our favorites, but I
Oh yeah,
think they've brought in the pieces on the interior that they can sort of work him back slowly if
sure.
needed. They have all these other guys. And you can have David Onyemata be your engine in the meantime while you're waiting for Grady
Yeah,
Jarrett to come
yeah.
back, given how many other guys you've got there. So, um, yeah, I'm excited to see it. I do want to give a special shout out to D'Angelo Malone, who he just got basically erased from the defense last year. It just wasn't a good fit for him. He played almost 80% of the special team snaps, so like he could be a core special teams guy, and I hope that will help his ability to stick around on the roster. But I wonder if I think D'Angelo Malone would be the perfect Caden Ellis like understudy
Hmm.
because I could see him having that same trajectory in the NFL where it comes in as a way undersized edge rusher, but really good athlete, really smart player. Starts off playing the edge, but can't really carve out a role full time. Um,
Mhm.
Gradually transitions to like a hybrid off ball sort of player. And I would just love if they could give him a chance to do that, where he can play special teams, where he can be sort of this understudy to Caden Ellis because we know he can rush the passer. He's got to learn the off ball stuff, but um, I hope they find a way to keep him around at least on the practice squad because I do think he's a good player. I think when we've seen him play, he's been productive. He didn't get a chance to play at all on defense last year. He was in all
Yeah.
17 games and played 2 defensive snaps because he played like 300 something special team snaps. But I hope they find a way to keep him around because I do like Malone a lot. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, obviously, like, look, like you said, in special teams, especially how the way that the kickoff rules are changing, having that special teams guy is going to be very huge, right? And that's why, like I'm very intrigued to see what's going to happen with Ray McLeod and that addition. Like that's kind of
yeah,
been his niche, like being a return guy. Well, all of a sudden, return guy is a whole lot more important than maybe what it was the last few years. Also, shout out because the uh the one of the guys who was like a key in making that kickoff rule, right? Like the old XFL rule. He was a center at Stanford. Just wanted to point that
yeah,
out. So
yeah,
shout out Sam Schwartzstein. I had to put that in there real quick. But yeah, it's like I said, special teams all of a sudden it starts gaining more importance again.
yeah.
And so that's good to see. That's going to help people kind of prolong careers, have a fit in the league, and D'Angelo Malone 100% could be one of those guys.
Yeah, yeah. I hope we can see him stick around because I do like him a lot. But yeah, Jordan, great stuff here. I think we covered it in great depth. It's obviously kind of a whole meta conversation about the defense. I know we haven't really gotten your take on all the moves, so this was kind of a good way to get into that too. Appreciate you guys. He is Jordan Watkins at Big 75 fella, now at Stanford once
Yep.
again. Excited for you. So happy that we got to podcast together for a little bit. But I know you're moving on up and back at your alma mater. So excited for you. Appreciate you. Anything else you want to plug before we sign off?
Oh no, I think that's mainly it. And again, thanks for thinking of me and having me. I know like you asked me to be on for draft coverage. I couldn't make it,
It's
right?
all
I
good.
was in the office, but no, it's always good to hop back on airwaves and talk some Falcons football. So
Yeah.
appreciate it. And obviously, yeah, whenever I can during the season, if I can during the season, I'll be there.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate you, Jordan. Guys, I'm Kevin Knight at Falcon. Kevin, thanks for tuning in to another Dirty Birds and Brews. We will be back next time with the linebacker and special teams episode that I mentioned with Trayshawn Diaz, our newest contributor over at the Falcoholic. So look forward to that one. But in the meantime, guys, like, subscribe, leave us that 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. Check out the Patreon, the channel memberships if you're interested in getting in on those patron fantasy leagues. And yeah, we will be bringing you some more episodes as we get closer and closer to training camp here in just a couple weeks. So until then, guys, thank you so much for watching. I'm Kevin Knight for Jordan Watkins. Have a great day, folks. Thanks.